What is going on, YouTube? Andrew Miller from Hook'emHeadlines.com coming back at y'all today with a fall camp update. I'm recording this on the evening of August 4th, so a little bit before the third fall practice is set to get underway. I believe Texas has practices today and tomorrow. They're practicing tonight, I believe, just because of the heat. Changed things up a little bit. They were at the Frank Denius Fields for most of the first 2 days. I believe they were in the humidor a little bit as well, just to get a break from the heat. But if you live in Texas, you probably know how hot it's been. If not, you could look at the weather. It's been in the mid to high 100s around Dallas and Austin and Centex in that area for the last couple of days. And so just searing hot, but also it gets them, I guess it gets them ready for, the early regular season. You're going to have some hot games against Rice, Alabama, Wyoming in the first 3 weeks of the season. So, but yeah, I want to provide some updates, notes, nuggets, standouts, things like that from the first 2 days of fall practice. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. I want to start with some just like nuggets and updates, things like that, and then I'll jump into the standouts and then some other things I want to cover as well. First and foremost, most important thing is that it looks like everyone's healthy. There's no green jerseys in the first 2 days of fall practice. Specifically, that means Isaiah Nayor, Jalen Catalon, Cole Hudson, DJ Campbell. I can go on, but a lot of these guys that dealt with injuries during spring ball, summer workouts, even a guy like Jalen Gilbo, who had a knee injury last year and that kind of was still lingering throughout winter workouts, spring ball, summer workouts. All those guys are active and full participants to start fall camp. That doesn't mean that we're going to see them in non-contact jerseys the entire camp. Maybe like the first scrimmage or once you put the full pads on, that changes. But for now, it's really, really good to see these guys going at full speed. Specifically Catalon, I think for him, not having the green jersey on is the biggest thing because Texas has been talking about, or at least there's been buzz around him getting healthier, him being ready for fall camp, and that proved to be the case. He's just dealt with so many injuries to Arkansas that could be a concern, especially with the injury or lagging injuries that he had, upper body injuries earlier this offseason. So it's good to see him fully ready to go because he's the first team safety, starting safety, opposite Jaron Thompson heading into the season. Also Isaiah Nayor, he's got a big brace on the right knee if y'all have seen pictures or reports coming out of the first two practices. He is a full participant, but it looks like he's still kind of shaking some of the rust off, especially in and out of his cuts. But straight line speed looking good, just catching the ball looking good. He's starting to get his confidence back, that sort of thing. But just from the perspective of shaking the rust off, I mean, that's something that's expected out of a guy that suffered an injury as serious as he did with a torn ACL in fall camp last year. And then I believe Cole Hudson was in a shoulder sling or like some type of shoulder brace yesterday in practice. But from what has been reported, what we heard, it sounds like that's not like a major issue. It's maybe more precautionary sort of thing. But he's still getting the first team reps at right guard. So taking a look at some of the other notes and nuggets, news, that sort of thing. I believe that Texas will be moving into full pads practice. It's either tomorrow or some point early next week. Usually the first few practices you get non-contact, helmets, shoulder pads, shorts, that sort of thing. And then I believe it's lining up the first fall scrimmage will be next weekend, but I'll check just to confirm that. Also, for the next, I'd say for the next few practices, you're going to start seeing a little bit more movement. Guys that maybe might not have that seniority, but that are making some moves that have looked good this offseason. You're going to start seeing them progress up the depth chart. I think a few specific spots, interior offensive line, I think you're going to see a little bit of movement there if guys are outperforming expectations or are looking good. I think running back is going to start settling in a little bit. I'll touch on that a little bit later with some of the standouts, but running back, I think you're going to see some movement. Linebacker for sure. Defensive line, and then potentially field corner, but we'll see how that shakes out in the next few practices. So yeah, let's go ahead and get into some of the standouts here. I want to start just talking, about some of the sentiments that I echoed on the site, some of the guys that I mentioned there, as well as some of the standouts that I pinpointed from my takeaways piece that I did after day 2 of fall practice yesterday. So, first off, this is an article I posted at the site earlier today. But first guy I want to talk about among the standouts is Jaray Bledsoe. So Jaray Bledsoe got some praise yesterday from Christian Jones specifically. Jones was asked in the post-practice press conference, who was standing out to him on the defensive side of the ball. And one player that he specifically mentioned was Jaray Bledsoe. He said that Bledsoe is looking very twitchy, that he's got a lot of different moves that he can use, essentially that he's becoming incredibly difficult to block. But, the one sentence that stuck out to me was that he said he's hyper flexible and very twitchy. But I think that kind of goes to show just, the sentiment that's been echoed for a while now that Jaray's he's just one of the physical freaks on defense. He's one of the most physically gifted edge rushers, and considering you got a room that's got guys like Jamon Tapp, Colton Vashik, Barryn Sorrell, a lot of just really, really athletic guys coming off the edge. That's a big compliment to be paid to Jaray. Jones specifically mentioned as well that he's gotten a lot stronger. You can really feel him on run blocks now, and specifically that he can definitely help us. I just take away from that Jaray's improved a lot. He's harder to block, and that he potentially could be an impact player this fall. It sounds like, for one, that he's really found his role in the defense. Jaray came in, I believe, as a 4-star defensive lineman, but there's a chance that he could still work out of the 4-eye, 5-tech, that sort of stuff, still, hand on the ground, but, he's definitely got the quickness and the length to be able to be a stand-up edge rusher as well. And so he's a guy that I think you should keep your eye on if you're looking for potential breakout players coming off the edge. Jaray's been mixing in second, third team reps at edge, but if he continues to stand out, continues just to get down to work and impress the way he has since summer workouts and early in fall camp, that he's a guy that could rise up, potentially challenge for a spot on the 2 deep. Texas needs these impact edge rushers, so anytime you get kind of praise like this heaped on one specific underclassman, it's important to pay attention. Next up that I wanted to mention among the standouts from the first 2 days of fall camp, this is another guy that I specifically wrote an article about on the site, just what role they're looking at, the type of impact they could have heading into the season. That's Jonathon Brooks. Brooks, he was noted as someone that's going to be part of a position battle at running back heading into fall camp. Sark, I think when he said that, running back is going to be a position battle during fall camp, that he was looking more at the entire position and the entire rotation than specifically at RB1. It does sound like Tashard Choice, Sark, the rest of the guys on offense have a lot of confidence in Jonathon Brooks as the RB1. One thing that was reported that I mentioned on the site was that Brooks looks like the bell cow heading into the season, that he is the guy that's setting the tone as RB1. Behind him, I do think it's going to be C.J. Baxter Jr. That 1-2 punch is probably the best situation for Texas, with also guys like Keelan Robinson. You can motion him around. There's a lot of different things you can do with him in the running game and the passing game, as well as Jaden Blue. I think it's his time to shine this fall, but some of those guys that'll still be involved. But Brooks, it looks like the guy. It's been mentioned that he's emerged as a much more vocal leader, someone that's just very, very much down to business. That workmanship mentality, and this is his year to really step up and take the reins in the backfield. So good to hear that from a physical perspective, leadership, the impression that he's made on his teammates and the coaches, that Brooks is checking a lot of the boxes heading into the season. And then other standouts that I had specifically pinpointed that are guys worth mentioning from the first few days of fall camp. Warren Roberson, true freshman defensive back. He's received a lot of praise here in the last few days. I mentioned that Jones, gave a shout to Jaray Bledsoe for how good he's looked, how hard he is to block now. He also mentioned Warren Roberson, among the guys that just really shown out with work ethic, that are looking good physically. I reposted a picture on the site from him in the first day of fall practice. He looks bigger than he is. I believe he's listed on the site at 6 feet, 180 pounds. He carries that weight really, really well, a lot of muscle. And from what we heard during summer workouts, someone that was really in shape when he arrived on campus and, just continued to get better. So, when there's this many people, including Sark, who mentioned him in the post-practice press conference on August 2nd after the first day of practice, that, Roberson was someone catching his attention. Eventually you hear enough noise around a player, kind of adds up to, someone that maybe not a breakout candidate for Roberson necessarily, but someone that's definitely outperforming expectations and is looking really like one of the hidden gems of the 2023 class, especially among the summer enrollees. Next up among the standouts is the junior defensive lineman Byron Murphy. Murphy, it's not a surprise that we have him among the standouts. I mean, I think he's the leader, the tone setter along the interior defensive line. He's going to be starter at nose heading into the fall alongside T'Vondre Sweat. But, Murphy, he was one of the, because yesterday he was one of the first guys that got to talk to the media. Clearly there's a level that he has there, or level of trust that the coaching staff has in him to represent the team. But one thing that caught my eye after the first day of fall practice, there's a practice report saying that Murphy's short area quickness and it's just his get off is elite. And just that, from a quickness perspective at the point of attack off the line of scrimmage, that he just looks like he's in a league of his own compared to the rest of the interior defensive linemen. Texas got some quick guys up front too. Alfred Collins' quickness off the line of scrimmage, Vernon Broughton, the issues that Vernon Broughton might have defending the run aside or getting pushed off the football. These guys are quick, really, really quick in the trenches. And the fact that Murphy is just kind of setting a new standard in that regard says a lot about how he's looked so far. I think he'll continue to look more impressive as fall camp moves along as he gets put on the pads. And this guy's just a dog, man. He's really set the tone for the interior defensive line since spring ball. He looked good last season, so not a lot of this is very surprising to me, but just in general, he's one of the standouts so far from how good he's looked physically in individual and team drills. I have to give him a shout here. And then the last of the players along the defensive front that I wanted to specifically mention among the standouts is junior edge rusher Barryn Sorrell. Sorrell, I don't know if it's necessarily that he's looked fantastic in the first few days of fall practice as much as it is that he's just really improved this offseason, taking his game to another level after, he was one of the guys that stepped up and was one of the better starters along the defensive front last fall. Best edge rusher, I think, that Texas had. And that's probably going to be the case again this year. Sark specifically mentioned him during his first post-practice press conference, just saying how good he is physically. He's a good run defender. And he specifically mentioned that he can create a pass rush or pass rush one-on-one himself. And while you think that might be obvious for an edge rusher, I think that's notable that Sark specifically shed light on that because, Sorrell was a decent pass rusher last fall, but there's another level that he can reach in that regard. And so I think he's kind of knocking on the door here of someone that could really emerge as Texas's sack leader this fall. I think that he might be the odds-on favorite to do that. Sorrell is really a guy that's looked at as one of the leaders, like Murphy, along the defensive front. And, we mentioned during summer workouts that he was a guy that was quote-unquote balling out. And, I think that continues to be the case in the early stages of fall camp. Moving forward, I'll be interested to see how much we're learning about, Sorrell's ability to get after the quarterback, what the one-on-one matchups are looking like with the first-team offensive line. But, this is a big year for him. This is a chance for him to reach kind of that all Big 12, all-conference level performer status. So, good to hear that he's, made progress so far and that he continues to get better heading into the season. Moving on, there's a few guys that I wanted to note that I had targeted in my takeaways piece that I did after the second practice yesterday, as well as a few true freshmen that are standing out. That's kind of the way I wanted to cap this video. I think one player that deserves kind of his own part of this video is Johntay Cook. He definitely could be mentioned with the standouts. He, from all the noise and all the reports, specifically talking about how good he's looked so far, he warrants a lot of attention. And one thing that was interesting from Horns 24/7 report after the first day of practice was that Johntay looks like someone that belongs in that top group of 4 or 5 wide receivers. I think the takeaway so far has been that he really is that next guy in line at field receiver once Worthy heads to the NFL draft next offseason. And Cook, mentioned it before, he added a lot of muscle mass during summer workouts. Talk about true freshmen that got their body right. He's definitely one of them. I also noticed that both Byron Murphy, Christian Jones, and even Sark mentioned, Cook among the freshmen to watch. Murphy and Jones, when they were asked about players on offense, younger players that could surprise, Cook was one of their answers. I guess to Murphy's point, there's no surprise there because they were teammates at DeSoto, so they've had the connection there already as teammates in high school. But Johntay is going to be a contributor this fall. The fact that he's already showing maturity and talent well ahead of, or not just talent, but skills well ahead of his years. He's running good routes. Apparently his speed, change of direction, quickness in and out of the cuts. IT specifically mentioned that as one of the areas that he's excelled so far. And then one practice report note that I saw that was good was he apparently when media was leaving practice yesterday, he burned a defensive back on a go route, made a really nice catch. I guess in game setting that's scoring a touchdown there, but in terms of surpassing expectations of the first 2 days of fall practice, Johntay Cook is the definition of that. Separately, wanted to give a shout out to a few true freshmen that, maybe are higher on the depth chart than I thought they would be, or just looking good to start fall camp. One that hasn't gotten a ton of attention so far, but that it is worth mentioning is Tassili Akana. He's been getting some work with second team at edge. It sounds like the kind of that role that we've talked about before for him as a pass rush specialist is something that he could fill this fall. I think he's still a little bit slim, but if he's already taken occasional practice reps and team drills with the second team edge rushers, that's a good sign that maybe late game situations, rotational or just garbage time reps that he's going to see the field a good bit this fall. At linebacker, one thing that caught my eye, Samaje Burrell, from an explosiveness, conditioning, just physical build perspective. It sounds like he's looking really, really good. He was one of the few linebackers that was a summer enrollee, so he had a little bit of catch up to do, but I think in a year or two, he's a guy that could contribute a lot at either weak side linebacker or middle linebacker. And I think the fact that he's already kind of looking like that rangy linebacker that could make a lot of plays for this defense and really be a leader in the future is a really good start for him. So again, he's worth shouting out. And then, I already mentioned Warren Roberson, Johntay Cook, guys like that. Arch Manning and Malik Murphy. I know Malik's not a true freshman, but the QB room's looking, I saw the word or the phrase used, buttoned up. I think that's a good way to put it. Yours, again, clear leader here. But Malik and Arch looking good too. The QB room clearly has a lot of talent. But, I think these guys, like if something does happen to Quinn this fall, there is some level of concern from an inexperienced perspective that, Malik Murphy or Arch Manning might not be ready, but they're showing a lot of maturity. They're looking good, with their throws deep, in the flats, things like that in one-on-one drills to start fall camp. We'll continue to monitor their progress, but they're off to a good start so far in fall camp. And then, I guess the two other guys just shifting the attention back to the offensive side of the ball, Andre Kojo and Peyton Kirkland. They're the two true freshman offensive linemen that have received second-team reps so far this fall. Kirkland, I believe both days at different tackle spots because they moved Cam Williams around a little bit. Kirkland has been getting second-team reps. That's really been a thing for him since spring ball, though. He was the only early enrollee on the offensive line that was consistently getting second-team reps. And then also Andre Kojo on the first day. For me, that really surpasses expectations because Kojo was one of the lower-rated guys in this offensive line class. He's a big human, definitely has the tools to succeed, but I think the fact that he's pushing for a spot on the two deep this early at offensive tackle says a lot about his growth already. So those two guys definitely worth shouting out. I forgot one earlier among the standouts. Loop back here, DJ Campbell. From the perspective of, again, similar to Roberson and a lot of these guys that I've mentioned so far, but physically really looks the part. He's up to 6'3", 345. Sounds like he's playing with a lot of power that, and his understanding of the schemes has gotten a lot better this offseason. Really just sounds like his mindset's in the right place. And, I mentioned this during the spring, but, DJ Campbell's going to have every opportunity to succeed and I think to win that starting job at right guard this fall. A lot of that hinges on what happens at center. If Cole Hudson or Connor Robertson, probably would more than likely be Hudson if anyone. If one of them is able to unseat Jake Majors as the starting center, that opens the door at right guard potentially for DJ Campbell to be the full-time starter. But it's up to him to be able to, win that job. But he's off to a good start. He's had a lot of momentum. I think Campbell is definitely a guy that's on the right track. He suffered that wrist injury late in spring ball, but caused him to miss the spring game. He clearly has worked back to full strength, and it sounds like he's the best he's ever been since he arrived on campus last offseason. So, yeah, that's another name to watch there. But anyway, that's pretty much it. Like I said, I wanted to give a rundown, some news, notes, nuggets, that sort of thing. Standouts, namely, give an update on some true freshmen as well. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I believe Shane Tark and I will come back from like a first week, a fall practice update, kind of recap that at some point this weekend. But yeah, anyway, for Andrew Miller at Hook'emHeadlines.com, that's pretty much it. Welcome.